I do want to address two questions that came out of the audience from that last one. Someone asked the question, what's important for an entrepreneur to know? I built two companies. The most important thing you need to know, whoever that person was, you got to understand underwriting. If you don't understand how a bank or a private equity or any debt source is going to value what you're doing, you're never going to be able to build a company into a position to where you can get the access to capital that you need. So underwriting is the critical, most important part. Yeah, you need the long-term plan, as Diane laid out. And yeah, you need to start building backwards and looking at 3-month steps. But if you don't have that plan tied to how equity or debt is going to underwrite it, you're never going to be successful. That's critical. There was another question at the end that I heard. If I think of it again, I'll come back to it. So let's take the next step. Mark, 30 minutes? Sure. All right, perfect. So I've jumped classes. One day I want to write this book. I grew up incredibly poor, and then I'm jumping socioeconomic classes, right? I grew up, and what a win looks like where I grew up in the hood was like, and I'm not saying this to be funny, I'm really saying this to be legitimate. It's, if you had a job that had benefits, if you were the good kid, you weren't involved in a lot of trouble. If you got an education, maybe you went to community college. If you had swag, if you had nice city shoes, like there are things that there's jargon. Hey, what's up, dog? Hey, shit, that's what's up. Hey, for real though. Hey, you good? Hey, I'm good. Like there's a whole jargon that people use in different socioeconomic classes. And that's the class that I kind of grew up in. Here's the jargon. Here's what a win looks like. And then you jump up, right? I go up to Stanford University, and now you're on campus at Stanford, and you're finding out that facts matter, right? You start thinking of being around students that have ideas of owning companies and building their own companies, or joining, becoming doctors, or going on to have incredible careers. And all of you've done that. We all leave high school, we go out to college, and we got to go make a life for ourselves, whether that's finding a wife and building a career, and owning a home, building up some children, and then having an opportunity to hopefully retire, leaving behind some type of inheritance. So we're all trying to accomplish that. I've jumped a few times, and I want to talk about today what you need to learn as you jump socioeconomic classes. So I'm going to meet you where you are, and you're way behind where they are. So I'm going to meet you where you are and let you understand how I made the jumps and the things that I learned as I moved up to certain jumps. So you're going out to make this life. As you go out to make this life, you're trying to figure out what kind of job am I going to have. And what I want to tell you about the job that you want, the career that you're going to have, you need a plan. You're only as good as your plan. You have to have a legitimate plan. And you can't learn enough from your own life to build this plan, which means you need to read books on people that you are in industries that you want to be in. You should be watching YouTube videos on those people and people that are in those industries. You should be jotting down, how did they get there? What schools did they go to? Who did they contact? Where did they get their access to capital? Did they get debt? Did they get equity? Which pieces can you start to reel together? Understand their strategic thinking, their narrative on what they were trying to accomplish. And you start to get pieces of this story, of multiple people's stories, and then you start building it together and pulling it together from different tapestries, and you start to say, you know what, I've got enough threads for what my plan is going to be because I've taken and learned from all these other groups. Does that make sense? All right. Number one, I'll give you a story about me starting a real estate development firm. We wanted to be real estate developers right out of Stanford. I went to the NFL, played 5 years, got out, and then my college roommate, his father was in real estate development. Never heard of real estate development. I went to Stanford, and I still didn't understand what real estate development was. I was a public policy major. We looked at what development was, but I still didn't understand how do you underwrite it? How do you look at a piece of land, figure out what can be built on it? How do I finance it? And then how do I know if I can make a profit at the end of the day? Like those are the real pieces. How do we underwrite this? How do I make money? So we wanted to get into the business, and we had a significant challenge. We didn't have any tenants because we wanted to be retail developers that wanted to work with us. We thought that we would go work for Walgreens because they were growing like crazy. This was back in 1999, 2000. So it was about 2001, 2002 is when I started that company with my buddy. And we wanted to work with Walgreens, but Walgreens already had enough developers in every territory where they were developing. So we wanted to develop for them in North Carolina. And we found out that the young lady that was the real estate manager for North Carolina, she already had 6 preferred developers that she would give proprietary information to and say, we need 25 sites. Here are the regions within the city where we need to be located. And she's given that proactively to people that she trusts, people that she's worked with over a long period of time, people that she has relationships with, people who have actually produced deals and gotten them done for her on time and on budget, or on time and under budget. So we couldn't find a way to break through. And my business partner, his father had given us access to $1 million of capital. He didn't just give it all to us. We had a little bit for salary, a little bit for office admin. We had dead deal money. If we needed to chase deals, we could put earnest money up. We had access to it, and he would give it to us as we needed. And he said, I'll give you access to it for 1 year. And if you can't do a deal, then that's pretty much the end of the company. I'm going to go to law school or something like that. So it gave us a year. We're down to the 10th month and we don't have a deal. And we tried everything that we knew. Then we went down to the basement and we said, we got to start rethinking strategies here. What can we do to get Walgreens to want to work with us? So we just started playing off of each other. It really was not talking to some expert and giving us the right idea. We learned enough throughout the process of our first 10 months to figure out, okay, what is this young lady's job? Her job is to go out into Charlotte, North Carolina, and to figure out, how to build 4 to 5 Walgreens a year. And I'm sure she's got maps of where she wants to be at. I'm sure those maps have what color the competitors are on there and what intersections they kind of want to be at. And there's demographic information. What's the population around 1 mile? There's zoning information on actual sites. Is it zoned appropriately to be able to build what you want to build on it? And she's got this whole map for what they want to do in Charlotte, but she doesn't have access to all the sites. So what we decided to do is, why don't we do her job for her? Our best chance to get her to work with us is to do all the work that she has to do over the next 5 years in the next month. How do we do this? How do we break down the market? So we started talking to his father. His father was a real estate developer. We started to figure out what Walgreens trade areas looked like, a 2-mile radius, how far they were built from each other. We started to figure out they want to be on the going home side of the road. So if you look at downtown is up here and you're coming home down this way, that means the west side of the road is the going home side of the road. So we started to learn all these different things. So what we did, we put together this presentation. We went to Charlotte. We drove every single road in Charlotte. We took out a map and we circled every intersection. We drove it. At every single intersection, we looked and said, okay, what's here? And we would determine, is that something old that we can buy, that we can knock down? No. Is there a vacant sign up here? No. So we'd find something that was old. That's called an assemblage. And we would go back and look at the Secretary of State's page to find out on the property tax who the owner on record was. And we found about 122 sites across 25 trade areas. And then we whittled that down to our top 75. And on every one of those sites, what we decided to do was all the work that Walgreens would do. We found out that they own, or rather they use a demographics program called Claritas, which just gives them the 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 mile, all the demographic information, income, ethnicities, age, all that stuff. And so we bought the Claritas program so that when they look at the data that we're presenting to them, it's in their same language and then they could trust it if we let them know it's Claritas. We took our top 75 sites across our top 25 trade areas, whittled that down further to about the top 30 sites in each of these trade areas, and then we put together site sheets on each one. We've got the demographic information. We found out the color dots that Walgreens uses on their map for competition and for themselves, and we found out that we could walk a lot of these sites and fly in a contractor who was doing Walgreens in West Virginia, and then he would walk the sites with us to figure out what kind of site work and what kind of off-site work, so we'd have budgets on each one of these sites that we were putting together. In addition to those budgets, we also had all of the zoning information. So we went and we said, you know what? It's zoned residential today. What is the process to get through the city planning department to get it zoned to commercial? And what's the likelihood to do that? And then you call the city planner and you find out, to do a rezone, you may need to make an amendment to a general plan. You may have to go through a city council process. It may just be administrative, that if it's a use that the city will like to see at this intersection, they'll let you do it. So we'd have all the timeline for all the top 30 sites that we had. And we put all this information together and we went to a convention called the International Council of Shopping Centers. And most people go to that convention and they talk to tenants, and this is where all the national tenants go. Everybody goes there. It's in Vegas, and they all have booths set up. And you go in there, you ask to meet with the person that's in the region, that's the real estate person. Developers go in and say, look, I got this nice site. Would you like to do a deal on this site? Can we talk about it further after the convention when you get back into your office? And that's what everyone typically does. We went and said, we want to speak with Miss Sarita Hill, that was her name. And we want to set up a 10-minute meeting while she's here. They would do 10 to 15-minute meetings. And we went into the room and we said, listen, here's a book. In this packet is every single site in Charlotte, North Carolina, they had no stores at the time, that Walgreens can develop on. We've talked to all the owners. We know what's likely to be sold. We know what the prices are. We've already looked at what the zoning is. We already know what the development timelines would be and what it would take to be zoned appropriately for a drive-through retail location for a Walgreens. We flew in a contractor that you guys approved that was in West Virginia to walk over these sites with us. So the budgets that we put in here are real budgets based on what the off-site work is going to be. The building cost is easy. It's the same everywhere. It's the off-site work, stuff that happens on the site that's the greatest risk to the budget that you're putting together. And we said, here's all of these deals. You can take all of these and give them to the guys you're already working with. Just give us 2 deals. That was an effective presentation. They decided to give us 2 deals, and she took our other deals, and she did give them to the other guys, and those guys made millions of dollars off of the sites that we gave them, which I don't mind because I was able to make money on the 2 Walgreens deals, and there started our relationship with Walgreens. So now I'm inside with Walgreens, and we're doing deals with them, and she ends up getting moved to Florida, so then we end up going to Florida with her, and then she gets Northern California. So we end up doing about 12 deals, making about $15 million on those deals. But the strategic thinking is what I'm really trying to impress upon you. The ability to go down into that basement and to think about, how do I get this person to want to do business with us? This is what entrepreneurs do. This is what people do when you go in for an interview for a job. You have to understand, what are they looking for? What looks like a win to them? What is the jargon? And if you don't know that yourself, you don't have a plan, you have to read other people who've been in these positions. You got to Google it and research it and go have meetings with people and write out what you think differentiates your value to this organization or that you're starting this business. That's the level of strategic thinking that they weren't talking about today, that they do on a normal basis. It's their normal conversation because they are executives at senior companies and they're only speaking at a strategic level. Most of us are going to be workers probably in here. They're going to go get a job with a good wage and work at that job for a long time. If you ever want to make a whole bunch of money and become the person who takes the risk, then you will have people who are afraid to take risks that work with you. That's something to know. People who are afraid to take risks work for others that do take that same risk. So strategic thinking, that's what I'm trying to get over. You have to have a plan. That's story number 1. Story number 2. So I went through a real estate development career. 2008, the market crashed. We made a lot of money. I took basically a retirement for 7 years, 32 to about 39 years old. And then I decided to go back to work. I had a lot of stuff in between that I won't talk about now because it's not relevant to this discussion. But I made a lot of progress with my network and my contacts, and it actually led to this opportunity I'm going to tell you about now. So real estate developer, that was my entire career. I run for 2 political offices. I lose, spend a bunch of money. I'm going to go back to work in 2015. I decided to go back to work, and I said, you know what? I met 5 billionaires on the campus of Stanford University, not on the campus of Stanford, but through my Stanford network, through Stanford alumni. I'm going to go meet with all these people, and I'm going to try to get them to give me a job. And seriously, and I'm thinking, you know what? I'm valuable. I'm going to go in and tell them my story. I've made a few $1 million, in doing real estate development. I've been able to take the last 7 years off. I'm looking for an opportunity now. You're someone that I admire. You're doing the things that I want to do. You're living the lifestyle one day that I hope that I can live. I respect you a lot. I was wondering if you can give me some direction on where you think someone my age with my resources, with the skill sets that I have, would make an impact. Talked to all 5. 3 of them offered me a job. Incidentally, one of the people that offered me a job told me that if this group here offers you a job, forget the rest of us. You should take a job from these 2 guys. Those guys are Brad Freeman and Ron Spogley, and I took the job. Now the question is going to be, how did I get this job? And that's what I want to talk about today, as I've got dry mouth apparently. I go into this meeting with these guys, and I give them the whole spiel that I just gave to you. And they're like, you know what? We're thinking about hiring someone in our family office. A family office is if you're really wealthy, you've got $700 million that you have to go out and invest. You're not just going to go put it all in a couple of stocks or put it in your money market account. You're going to build this family office where they're investment professionals and they have different agendas for each bucket and each vertical that they're in, from venture capital to private equity to real estate to, your traditional assets, stocks and bonds, et cetera. And they've got a plan for what they want to do. They were looking to hire someone in private equity in the family office. I have no private equity experience, 0. And so I'm thinking, okay, damn, how am I going to get this job? All these guys are talking. They're talking to people in their big company. They own this large company called Freeman Spogley. They're talking to people in that company. They're interviewing them. They're interviewing other experienced private equity people that are in different family offices. And I'm the only guy coming in late with no private equity experience. So I had to go home and I had to get a plan. I have to figure out a way that I can differentiate my value to them to make them say yes to me and no to the other guys. And private equity is you're going and making equity investments and debt investments in companies buying a minority or a majority share. And if you buy a majority share, now you're planning all the growth and you're working with these management teams to be able to put together those growth plans, whether they're going to do vertical growth, where they go by under them the producing and manufacturing all the way out to the sales chain, et cetera. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know all this P&Ls and income statements and balance sheets. I know what they are, but I don't know how to look at them and understand, what are these earnings strong? Are they weak? Are the sales something you'd be interested in? Do we understand if there's recurring revenue? Like all the things I've had to learn now, I didn't know all these things. And I'm trying to articulate them to you in a way which right now you can understand where I was at then. So I'm not giving you the real language yet. We'll get there once I tell you how I got the job. But I'm there speaking in incomplete phrases and thoughts because I'm not a private equity guy. So this is what I thought. These guys don't need a private equity guy. You know private equity. Anybody you hire, they're going to be inferior to you. You can look at a P&L, income statement, and a balance sheet right away and know the strength of this company. So why bring in a person that's junior to you to duplicate the exact same skill sets that you guys have? What you really need is an operator, someone who knows how to go out to these businesses that you're contemplating making an investment in and understand, because when you buy a business, you're just buying a group of people that are making some level of profit. And there's different groups of people that are doing different things, and they're all trying to make a profit, whether you're in finance or whether you're in retail. It doesn't matter what you're in. It's just a group of people that are driving some profit level. And the question that you have to answer if you're going to invest in this group of people, can they keep making the profit that they're making? Can they grow that profit base? Do they have the right acumen, intelligence, and skill sets to be able to get there? Do they have the right ideas? Is this something, a proposition that we should invest in based upon the execution of the people that are there? That's what I sold to them. You need someone who's going to go to these sites because you're never going to go. These are companies that probably worth 25, 30 million. These guys are buying companies that are worth 400, 500 million. You're never going to go. Brad and Ron are never going to go sit in this office and talk to this guy that's running a payroll outsourcing company, or talk to some guy who owns 30 Dunkin' Donut stores and we're going to buy that company for 15 million. You're never going to go there. You need someone who can go there and understand if these are good operators or bad operators. You bring me in and I'll show up early, I'll stay late. Nobody will outwork me. I will get you the results that you need. I'll learn the things that I need to learn faster, quicker, and I'll be better than the people that you're interviewing after about 6 months. So bring me in. I'll make sure that you never invest in a deal where the people are not good and they won't execute. And they hired me. I differentiated my value proposition. I went in behind. I went in with less experience, but I put together a plan. I understood how to position myself to them because I understood what a win looked like because I put my plan together. I knew this would make an impression on them. They knew that they were never going to go to these companies. And do you want a private equity guy who can look at a bunch of spreadsheets and see, God, look at this P&L and look at the growth of the EBITDA over the last 5 years and what's the compound annual growth rate? Do you really want a guy that can just point all this out? Because that's what these guys are. Or do you want someone like me who built a company to a $163 million company with a $1 million investment that almost didn't work because it took me 10 months to get my first deal. I was 2 months to almost having the success in business that I've had. Differentiating your value proposition. Does that make sense? I grew up with 10 people living in a 3-bedroom trailer. We didn't have a lot of food to eat at times. We'd have to eat mayonnaise sandwiches, syrup sandwiches. All these parts and stuff, my uncles, we used to all look through this to try to sell and try to make money. We didn't have a lot of conveniences because we lived outside of the city limits. And I think that here is where my heart for community started. And it was just in the simple sense of all of us working together, growing together, living together, and doing all the work that was required. And I think that as I evolved to more financial sufficiency, I think that it was easier for me to look back and have a passion for other people who were in those same conditions to say, you know what, how can I be a part of building a better and stronger community around people? And maybe they can make the leap that I was able to make. We play football. I mean, it looks small now, but when you was a kid, it was big. It was on the sports field, on the football field itself, that the racial barriers were dropped because I lived in the segregated South. In high school, I was playing football, and I was heavily recruited. I was one of the top recruits in the state of Texas. I could have went to any Division I college that I wanted to go to.
Damon Dunn at the 10.
And so I chose to go to Stanford University because I felt like it gave me the best opportunity to be successful. Even if football didn't work out, it was the best choice, that I've ever made in my life. And I was surrounded by kids that wanted to be senators and Supreme Court justices and president of the United States, and it caused my ambition to grow. And that was one of the single most important lessons I learned at Stanford. Whatever it is that you can conceive, if you're willing to work hard enough, you can achieve it.
Looking at him, it kind of sets the expectation, or it breaks through a lot of the stereotypes that, African American or Hispanic students are not able to go on to college, and he was able to break that.
When he rolled out of the NFL and he was ready to start his business career, his idea of starting was not going to work for somebody else. It was starting his own company, and they started basically from scratch.
When I was 12 years old, I was a class clown. And one day my teacher had enough of it, and she put me out of the classroom. And I remember sitting in the hallway, and a janitor walked by, and he told me, he said, look into that classroom. I looked in there, and he said, well, what do you see? And I didn't say anything because I was embarrassed. And he said, what I see in there are a bunch of kids learning how to be your boss. And that hit me so deep to my core. At that point, I started to start setting higher expectations for myself. I said, I'm never going to get kicked out of the classroom again. I said, I'm going to start making good grades because I'm not going to let anybody else be my boss.
They went out and did it, and they did it across several states, in a big way with major corporations and built up a successful empire that it'd be impressive for anybody in their entire life to have a career that successful, and to do it at his age in that amount of time frame is almost unheard of in the industry that we're in.
Today I want to talk to you about finishing the race.
Damon's first sermon was "Finish the Race," and it really goes with him, because anything Damon starts, he's gonna finish.
Anyone who would take the time, coming from California, to come and inspire kids, to me, that's amazing.
He's always been taught to give. The more you give, the more you receive. And so Damon's always been a giver, and that's one of the qualities that I admire in him, because he blesses others. And we often talk about you can feed a man for a day, but if you teach him how to fish, you feed him for life. And so that is a quality that he instills in everyone around him.
If one person is suffering in my community, if one person is dealing with an injustice in my community, if one person is dealing with education challenges, then that diminishes me. And I am inextricably woven together with their sense of purpose and their destiny. And so I feel compelled, I feel obligated to go help and to go share.
So I thought it'd be interesting to take a look at the rate of growth of success over time in my life. And what we're going to find here on this second slide is that there's a period in my life where the growth of success was pretty flat. So the growth of success over time, I was not accomplishing a lot at that time. And that's probably the period of time where my mom had me at 16. My father was killed when I was 3. Then my mom left me with my grandparents. I ended up growing up in that trailer and living with 10 people. And I slept with 2 uncles for the first 10 years of my life and watched both of them go to prison, one for murder, one for armed robbery. And then I lost 3 of my closest friends to murder by the time I was 16. And then what we're going to find is that there's another period of time in my life as things progress where the rate of growth over success over time really accelerates. There's this explosive period. Now I'm a junior, senior in high school. I'm a 4.0 student. I'm recruited by pretty much every college in the country to go play football. I go to Stanford University. I'm academic all Pac-10. I'm first team all Pac-10. I had great mentors when I was at Stanford. And I was able to go on at that point to start my own business after I played in the NFL. So a lot of success, and the acceleration was incredibly fast. And I think what's interesting is that there's this inflection point that's created. And I really want to spend some time today talking about what allowed my life, right, to be able to transition from this slow growth of success to this explosive growth of success. And then also, why is it that my peers, the people that I grew up with in my neighborhood, were not able to access the same outcomes? And I think the most illuminating point here is that my expectations changed. I started to develop prodigious expectations. And if you contrast that with my peers, what you're going to find is that it wasn't that they had 0 expectations or that they had no expectations. It's that they had low expectations and then they met them. But my expectations started to grow, and I would be what Norman Vincent Peale would say is a possibilitarian. I started to look beyond the plausible outcomes based upon my socioeconomic status and the people that were surrounding me, looking beyond the probable outcomes and being able to see what was possible. And a lot of people in my community, they could not do that. So how did prodigious expectations create this inflection point in my life? I think it'd be interesting to look at some science behind this. There's some really fascinating research done in psychology and behavioral economics, particularly by a guy by the name of Daniel Kahneman. He's a Nobel Prize winning psychologist and economist, and he wrote a book called Think Fast, Think Slow. And Kahneman suggests that our brain uses 2 systems to make decisions. System 1 is fast, it's intuitive, it's quick, it's more subconscious. It's the part of the brain that's engaged when you hear a male voice say that I'm pregnant. And within 200 milliseconds, your brain has already determined that there's something wrong. And it seems automatic, but in reality, what's happened, your brain has made several calculations. It's conglomerated certain information about voice tonality and about biology. System 2 is slower. It's more deliberate. It's more conscious. It's the logical part of our brain that we engage when someone asks us to multiply 14 times 27. Or they say, give us the alphabet backwards from Z to A. And Kahneman suggests that we spend most of our lives making decisions in system one. And system one primarily operates under what's called associative memory. So there's these ideas that are laying around in your head, and then you hear certain things, and then your brain makes decisions based upon the association of different things going on in your mind. So here's an example. If I ask you what's 2 plus 2, many of you are going to say 4. Not because you calculated it, but because you associate 2 plus 2 with 4. That's your associative memory. Now, the fallacy in the associative memory is that it's prone to jump into conclusions because it ignores information that it doesn't have. It can create cause and effect relationships that do not exist. So it's prone to making mistakes. Here's a great example. So let's take someone from my neighborhood, grows up their entire life, and they hear that you cannot be successful if you're poor. That's just what they're taught. Then they go on in life and they give their very best effort in some project at school or their best effort in some sport or some job, and then they fail. And their brain is likely to infer that that's just par for the course for poor people. That's just the way that it is. But in reality, it was just a setback. It was just a learning opportunity. But because their system one was primed to believe that poor people can't succeed, it confirms the ideas that are laying around in their head. Then this vicious cycle begins, where people have these ideas that the cards are stacked against them and they can't succeed. And then their minds spend their entire life confirming those very thoughts that they have inside of their head. So I think if we want to understand the inflection point in my life, I think we have to understand what were the ideas that were laying around in my head and how was my system one shaped? Well, in the first season of my life, my system one was primarily shaped by my mom. My mom left me with my grandparents when I was 3. She came back and got me when I was 11 years old. And my mom would tell me, son, God is going to use you to do great things. She would tell me that education is your golden ticket. It's your way up and your way out to a new life. Education is your way out of this community. Education is your way to the career you wanted. With a good education, you can buy the house that you wanted and live in the community you want and be able to provide for your family. So she associated education with success. And I'd put a bookmark there and I would encourage all the parents and future parents here, be careful what you say to your children. Because life and death is in the power of the tongue. If you speak thoughts, you bring them to life. So if you tell your kids that they're not good enough or they're not smart enough or they're not pretty enough or they're too big or they're too small or they can't achieve, they are vulnerable and they are impressionable. And these things will impact their self-esteem and what they believe they can achieve. In the second season of my life, my environment shaped my system one. So I went to this radical environment at Stanford University. It was a place where failure was not looked upon negatively. As a matter of fact, failure was embraced. It was just a part of the journey to success. And people wanted to fail fast. Let's fail as fast as we possibly can so that we can get to success as quick as we can. They wanted to fail forward, right? Let's learn from what we went through. Build on those things that were good. Set aside those things that were not. It was a radical environment. The third season of my life, which I'm in now and probably started sometime after I left Stanford, I started to utilize my system two, my more logical, deliberate, conscious part of my brain, to shape my own system one. So I chose what books I wanted to read, what ideas I wanted to be exposed to, what environments I wanted to be in, what people that I wanted in my life. And I know there's a lot of psychology and self-help books and success books that would tell you that if you can just shape your system two, most of these books are centered on system two type of thinking, then you can change your life. And I'm telling you that you can't. You have to go through the hard, long, difficult process of reseeding your system one. So let's recap. If you consider and contemplate your system one, the more fast, intuitive, quick, subconscious part of your brain, as fertile soil, and you seed that soil with prodigious expectations, then you will have the opportunity to reap the harvest of inflection points in your life. But it will be through the deliberate and through the conscious and through the consistent effort of changing your system one, improving the way you think on a subconscious level so that you can make better decisions. So I'm going to leave you with some good news and some bad news about the life you've always wanted. The good news about the life you've always wanted is that it's waiting on you. The bad news about the life you've always wanted, it's waiting on you. Thank you.